The true test of a leader lies in his ability to decide what's best for the team. Every leader needs to understand the importance of using the right approach to achieve the desired results. Leadership is more than being in charge, it's a role reserved for those willing to lead and learn. The three major things a leader is supposed to know are competence, control, and clarity. A leader must be competent enough to realize his role and also delegate responsibilities to other people. He must understand that he is in control and that to achieve clarity, he must create an atmosphere of trust and accountability. David Marquet's experience aboard the USS Santa Fe shaped how he viewed leadership. With an approach that made every member accountable for their various departments, he was able to change the submarine status from the worst to the best in the fleet. As leaders, we must respect the importance of experience and adopt the will to be flexible. One of the most important characteristics of any leader is realizing when a plan is not working and the willingness to accept it when he's wrong. We can all become great leaders in our various organizations, all we have to do is find the right approach and be willing to learn at all times. Leadership is communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. David Marquet. Knowing the difference between the leader-leader approach and the leader-follower model is important to the development of an organization. The way to hierarchical achievement is to adopt a leader-leader approach. This approach puts you in charge without making the people under you feel inferior because you've given them the capacity to act as leaders in their respective spaces. Sometimes, your team needs you to identify the problems and tell them what to do. But the smartest choice in making a fulfilled, engaged workforce is to go for a totally extraordinary administration style, a leader-leader framework. This methodology shows that initiative isn't an out-of-reach quality that a chosen few are brought into the world with. Or maybe, this methodology perceives that we are, for the most part, leaders, here and there. The distinction between this methodology and the leader-follower approach is the means by which our choices are made. As it's typical with the leader-follower structure, all data is sent up the hierarchy of leadership, and a decision is made distinctly by the individual at the head of this chain. Interestingly, in a system of leader-leader framework, dynamic power is equally dispersed all through the levels of leadership. This permits people to follow up on recently developed data without having to take the matter up to the overall person in charge. For instance, in a situation where a pilot discovers that his submarine is off course and is in hazardously shallow water, he gets to make crucial decisions. Instead of alarming his leader, he takes decisive action and tackles this problem securely and successfully. However, it must be noted that this model isn't entirely theoretical. As experienced by the author, the application of this model depends on how the leader executes it. During one of their underwater expenditures, the USS Santa Fe, an atomic-controlled submarine with the U.S. Naval Force, had a terrible showing. Despite passing a lot of checks, the submarine failed important ones, prompting a change in leadership. It likewise had the most exceedingly awful group consistency standard of all the other submarines in the fleet. This all changed when Marquet turned into its officer and established a leader-leader style of administration. He tried to take this sub from one of the most exceedingly awful vehicles in the fleet to truly outstanding. The submarine's strategic viability developed from average and better than expected to incredible in assessments. The success of this approach prompted around 36 crew members to re-enroll, and the USS Santa Fe was granted the Arleigh Burke Trophy for the most improved boat in the Armada simply because they changed authority and leadership style. A change of leadership might seem a little too drastic when you look at the situation of things, but in many cases, it's an attempt to try something new and improved. Leadership is a major determinant in the attitude of workers and the level of productivity in any organization. The lack of a sustainable leadership strategy has led to a lot of organizations to ruins. Many workers hate their workplaces because they lack the motivation to get up to go to work. A large percentage of Americans only go to work to earn money, and they complain about not finding fulfillment with the work they do. The United States work fulfillment is at a record-breaking low. More than 50% of Americans are not happy with their jobs. This percentage is a disappointing pattern because when workers aren't happy with their jobs, it affects productivity massively. Another pattern other than disappointment in the workforce has developed as of late. We've encountered a drastic plunge in general efficiency arising from lack of motivation. More than $300 billion has been lost because of issues affecting profitability in the U.S. alone. These issues in the workforce are worrying, to say the least, and the problem is that a lot of people are oblivious of where it's all wrong. When people are comfortable working under a particular leader, it becomes very easy for them to get motivated and inspired. Suffice to say, a good leader determines the present and future of any organization. If the U.S. workforce were a patient, a specialist wouldn't stop for a second to state that the side effects are not favorable. The problems plaguing our work system are internal and mostly psychological. We must try as much as possible to identify the real problem so that we can stop it in time. To do this, we should look at the structure of the associations and organizations battling with leadership issues. If we are running or heading an organization that requires more physical than cognitive performance, the best methodology we should adopt is the leader-follower approach. With this approach, the person in charge makes the decisions, and these decisions are then completed by the followers. This kind of framework is an ideal fit for work that requires physical work since minor decisions can be designated among a wide range of workers to support effectiveness. However, a large number of the occupations we have in the present day require more cognitive performances. As a result of this, the leader-follower approach won't be ideal and can derail a project. As a leader, you must be able to discern which method would work better in a given environment. If you want people to think, give them intent, not instruction. David Marquet. Did you know? Between 2004 to 2012, at least 50% of U.S. workers were feeling unfulfilled in their workplaces. Enable your workers by giving them greater duty, which will make them more accountable within the organization. Since it has been established that the leader-leader approach can build the effectiveness of your group, how then would you adopt it into your business? First, you must begin by basically revamping the structure of your association to align with your new goals. It's essential to guarantee that the dynamic procedure includes your employees and is sustainable enough to keep the organization running for a long time. Many leaders love hoarding their power, believing that they should possess absolute authority in an organization. This belief is flawed because such a leader becomes domineering, and if such a leader is absent for a while, the employees become clueless. Designating leadership positions to your employees and sharing your power with them creates an environment where trust thrives. It doesn't mean that you intend to abdicate your responsibilities, but that you're willing to trust your employees enough to put them in charge. In a system where everyone is accountable for their actions, it becomes easier to identify a problem and correct it immediately. In the case of Marquet, on the USS Santa Fe, it meant moving a higher amount of the works regularly saved for the captain to other capable workers' chiefs. Before making some other moves, Marquet talked with every chief and asked how he could independently engage them to make crucial decisions on behalf of the team. As he would find out, what the chiefs really wanted was the capacity to control their team better and decide their leave time. Marquet granted this request and discovered that it motivated the chiefs to want to do more. By assigning them more power, the chiefs had more responsibilities and knew that they were now answerable to questions. Also, since they were now in charge, they felt compelled to do enough to sustain their positions. Secondly, we must not be too dominant with our leadership positions. If we want to make decisions as leaders, we must find a way to involve the employees. This tactic requires what Marquet described as the 3 words technique, where the leader makes a decision using the words, "I intend to." When you employ this tactic, you're giving room for suggestions from other members even though the final decision rests in your hands. Giving your team members more responsibilities ensures that they remain focused and committed to the task at hand. It might appear dangerous and unprofessional to you to give your workers more power and control, but this isn't supposed to be. We sometimes get scared that they would crumble under the enormous pressure of being a leader, and we then wonder if they can cope. The truth of the matter is that these fears are normal and expected. What's more, reassuring is the fact that there are several techniques available to help you out in this kind of situation. Firstly, leaders must ensure maximum concentration is adopted at all times. Lack of attention can be disastrous if care is not taken. In the instance when a crew member had switched off an electrical switch sooner than expected, the problem was narrowed down to a lack of concentration. When people who are supposed to be experts or professionals make mistakes, it majorly boils down to a lack of concentration. To deal with this, a policy must be put in place where everyone must be conscious of whatever action they are about to take. Each member must vocalize and gesture to what he or she is about to do before doing it. From something as basic as turning a valve to totally changing the course of an action, making intentional moves reduces blunders in all circumstances, irrespective of the task. Making intentional moves permits us to screen and correct mix-ups before they occur. Secondly, we can build a working environment by emphasizing the importance of trust and belief. On board the USS Santa Fe, trust was built through an affirmation of individuals. During briefings, individuals were affirmed to be competent and were allowed to work on tasks. Rather than listen to redundant explanations, the individual in question will be asked questions based on his field, and such individuals must produce good answers before being allowed to progress. Team individuals must also give satisfactory responses to get approval on a particular assignment. With this strategy, ill-equipped or distracted individuals can be recognized and tended to, giving you the chance to choose those who are well prepared and readily available for an assignment while also preparing those who couldn't answer accurately. Objectives must be continually expressed in order to enforce and reinforce the values of an organization on the team. Since the ability to make decisions lies with every person in a leader-leader association, it is significant that all workers are in the same spot with regards to objectives. But the problem most leaders have is how to effectively facilitate a situation where everyone is on the same page. Your organization's core values must be maintained to keep up team strength and maximize productivity and efficiency. One strategy for doing this is to imbibe the team with the organization's heritage or history. One way to do this is to continually remind everyone on board about their purpose on the team. Whenever the USS Santa Fe sailed past a broken or sunk submarine, Marquet made it his job to show it to the crew, reminding them of what would probably befall them if they failed to do their jobs well. As humans, we must always learn from others' mistakes so that we can make better decisions. Similarly, organizations can utilize their history to motivate workers. Big companies like Microsoft and Apple always reinforce the attitude of thinking outside the box to its employees. The belief that's expected to radiate among all the employees is that everyone is expected to contribute something significant to the organization. This creates a healthy internal competition that strives to improve the individual and the organization as a whole. By doing this, a leader can also introduce a reward system that acknowledges hard work immediately. When an employee or a team member does something significant, such a person should be applauded and rewarded in a way that would motivate others. Instigating a rivalry between team members can be counterproductive if not managed well. To avoid unnecessary competition, every member must be aware that their loyalty is to the development of the organization and not personal gains. The organization's core values must always resonate in their minds, and they must be reminded that the development of the organization is of paramount interest. For an organization to grow, selfish interests must be relegated because it disrupts teamwork and encourages unhealthy rivalry. If managed well, expectations can be used to establish a blueprint on which productivity can be positively increased. One of the principal leadership changes Marquet initiated was the act of having subordinates create expectations for themselves and the team. He would tell them what he expects of them and ask them to project on the team the same expectations. This way, he was able to act in his capacity as a leader while also designating enough power to the chiefs. Expectations create motivation for workers because they are under the obligation to deliver what the leader expects. It allows your employees to work beyond what they feel would be their limit. As a leader, you must create an atmosphere where your team would be eager to work to match or beat your expectations. Whenever the chiefs came to Marquet, he made sure they tabled their suggestions through expectations. For example, if a chief intends to do some repairs, he'll present the suggestion by telling Marquet that, "I expect to increase the submarine's strength and protect the crew members with the intended repairs." This approach meant that the chief had to think in advance about the advantages of his suggestions, which involves having a blueprint ready. As you work with people to build up their vision for the future, make sure you set up explicit, quantifiable objectives. The distribution of responsibilities is essential to the growth of any organization. If power rests absolutely in one man's hands, it becomes challenging to do anything in his absence. There are many circumstances where you can be rendered incapacitated, and you'll need someone else to step up in your stead. As a leader, you must have someone who can step up for you if you're unavailable. To get this type of person, you should groom them till they understand what you would have done if you were around. The distribution of responsibilities helps you build future leaders who can effectively continue from where you left off. As a team member or employee, a call to learn from the leader is not an opportunity for you to overthrow such a leader. The best students are patient enough to learn, and they know that they would be rewarded someday for their diligence and patience. When tasked with expectations, we shouldn't fret or become too critical of ourselves. Expectations are there to help us become better and more reliable. The more we overburden ourselves with tasks as leaders, the higher our chances of failing woefully. At first, the crew members aboard the USS Santa Fe depended on the executive officer (XO) in charge to keep records of the things needed to be done. They filed their issues in a folio known as the tickler, and then presented it to the XO or the captain. This framework followed the leader-follower